I don't think many people are going to be making excuses for this one. Seriously, what was that? You're 2 weeks away from your biggest show of the year, and you deliver an impact that is about 60% filler. I'm honestly not sure what that was supposed to be. What do I even do with this? You're going to have to help me out here because I'm very confused right now. Basically, this was the show where they took this global partnership concept and cranked it up to 11, featuring matches with Impact talent taking place in other companies all over the world. I do think there's potential in this idea, but clearly this was not thought through or planned out at all by anyone. For example, there's one match that takes place in Japan at Pro Wrestling Noah, and we see Eddie Edwards defending the GHC Championship against Marufuji. Now, currently, Eddie Edwards is involved in this feud with the AAA guys that I assume is going to culminate in a six-man tag match at Bound for Glory. Now, ask yourself, did this segment do anything to progress that feud or hype that match in any way, shape, or form? No. It was a good match, but that's all it was. Just a match with no storyline or connection to Bound for Glory of any kind attached to it that was completely random, utterly pointless, and felt like it was just there for no other reason than to take up space on the show. So ultimately, the match is complete filler, does nothing to hype Bound for Glory, and is really just a big waste of time. Now, having one segment like that on this show would be baffling enough, but then they just keep coming. OVE versus two Border City Wrestling guys in Canada. Complete filler, does nothing to hype Bound for Glory, waste of time. Petey Williams in a fatal four-way at Border City Wrestling in Canada. Complete filler, does nothing to hype Bound for Glory, waste of time. Trevor Lee versus some crash guy in Tijuana. Complete filler, does nothing to hype Bound for Glory, waste of time. That's over half the show right there. I appreciate good wrestling as much as the next fan, but the quality of the wrestling is meaningless at this point. This is the second to last show before your biggest show that you've had months to prepare for, and you delivered an impact that had so much filler on it that I honestly wondered if the writers were so lazy that they didn't even bother to write a script this week. Because really, what else am I supposed to think? How does Eddie Edwards versus Marufuji in Pro Wrestling Noah get anyone excited for Eddie Edwards versus AAA guys? How does OVE versus some Border City Wrestling tag team in Canada make anyone excited for OVE versus LAX? If these writers aren't even going to ask themselves simple, basic questions like these, then they're in serious trouble. It's as if they think that the novelty of airing matches that take place in other companies is all they need to make this concept work. It's not. In the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean shit. It's just the tip of the iceberg, but you have to maintain story continuity at all times. You can't just throw Trevor Lee into some crash match against random crash guy number one, who the audience was never introduced to, who he has no feud or storyline with, which has nothing to do with his title defense of Bound for Glory, and expect anyone, much less the casual viewer, to care. Why would they care? You haven't done anything to make them care. Your audience doesn't know who Ultimo Ninja is. He's nothing to them. Nothing. And as a result, this match is nothing to them. These international segments don't build anything, don't lead to anything, don't connect to anything, or hype anything. These matches all exist in a vacuum. And in an era when the mainstream audience has been conditioned to expect a story-driven product with consequences that play out and characters they're at least somewhat invested in, that's a really quick way to kill your show. The one slight exception to this was the AAA segment, where EC3 and James Storm faced Phantasma and Tejano in a match that frankly made me wonder if the writers want their audience to get sick of this matchup before or after they're supposed to pay for it. But at the very least, this match was doing something to hype a matchup Bound for Glory. The problem is, it wasn't done well. Last week, Tejano and Phantasma were in a fatal 5-way match with EC3, James Storm, and Eddie Edwards. That was where this thing about the AAA guys not liking each other suddenly came out of nowhere, and Tejano tried to collude with James Storm to get Phantasma's father assaulted with a steel chair. 1 week later, Tejano and Phantasma are teaming together like it never happened. And as if that's not confusing enough, Phantasma has no reaction. Literally, no reaction whatsoever to what Tejano tried to do to his father last week. It's as if it never even happened. And right there, once I realized that there was no story continuity, that Phantasma's partner trying to attack his father and stealing the pin from him last week was not even going to factor into this match at all, they lost me. I ceased to care about the match at that point because this feud is being so haphazardly slapped together, I don't even know what it's about anymore. I have no idea. I don't think the writers have any idea. And to top it off, once again, you've got Tejano playing the heel in a Mexican market. This whole thing, initially, was predicated on a matter of company pride, Impact versus AAA, America versus Mexico, and all that crap. Now you're in AAA, in Mexico, where you'd think the AAA guy would be the hometown hero playing up his allegiance to AAA, and instead he's the biggest heel in the match. I don't understand this at all. This whole thing is such a mess. I couldn't untangle this knot if I had 4 extra hands. My God. Ugh. The one and only international segment out of any of this crap that actually accomplished what it was supposed to do, and that's make the viewers anticipate Bound for Glory in some form or fashion, was this 30-second pre-tape with OVE after their match. They say that with LAX, they're fighting the whole family. And so, sometimes to fight a family, you have to bring a family! And then we get this mysterious shot of a guy who... I'm assuming that was Sami Callihan, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I thought that was good. It was well produced. It gave us a glimpse of someone who will presumably factor into the 5150 street fight and presented him as a guy who is not someone you should fuck with. Great. Thank you. That works. You should have kept this segment and ditched the filler match they had beforehand. Now, once all that stuff is out of the way, you're really not left with a whole lot. So what else was there on this show? Well, there was a backstage angle about management being pissed off at Eli Drake because he hasn't been doing his media appearances. Which was very confusing because I'm pretty sure there's recent videos on the YouTube channel of Eli Drake doing media appearances. Hell, if you go to ImpactAsylum.net right now, there's a video on there of Eli Drake doing media appearances. Are you beginning to understand why I question who the hell is steering the ship over at Universal Studios? Jesus Christ. What else? Oh, Laurel Van Ness is walking through the crowd. Still dressing like a lunatic, still desperately searching for a husband, and has come bearing champagne this time. You know, God bless Chelsea Green. She has taken an absolutely thankless gimmick that completely threw her under the bus and somehow gotten it over. I hope and pray that the writers have something good planned for that girl after Bound for Glory, because holy shit does she deserve it. There's a tag team match with Eli Drake and Chris Adonis versus Johnny Impact and Garza Jr. Pretty straightforward stuff here, nothing fancy going on. and that's probably why it worked, because there was very little for the writers to screw up. It's a good match, and Johnny gets the pin for the babyfaces. Simple but effective, and nothing stupid happened. I think Eli Drake needed the win more, but I'll take what I can get at this point. Although, Garza Jr. is getting a very confusing amount of exposure in the world title picture for a guy who was apparently going to be in the X Division title match at Bound for Glory. You figure that one out. And just like that, it's time for the main event, Moose versus Lashley again. Now, this is about the American Top Team feud, so naturally I had zero hopes for this. But leave it to this show to completely blindside me. Finally, after weeks of this feud being one of the worst storylines in wrestling, they actually got it right. Finally, Dan Lambert and American Top Team do what they're supposed to do. They cause a DQ, they stir up some shit to get heat, but in the end, the focus is on the people the feud is supposed to be about. Except for King Mo, who wasn't there for some reason. I don't know why. But look what happened here. American Top Team were not made to look ridiculously superior to the Impact talent. Moose was protected. He was not made to look like an idiot for once. And in fact, he finally got over on those thugs. The only MMA guy who got over on an Impact talent here was Stephan Bonner on Lashley. But it worked in this case because Bonner is actually going to be in that match at Bound for Glory. And also because it was just really cool seeing Stephan Bonner flatten Bobby Lashley like that. This segment was actually really effective and entertaining, and I can't believe I'm saying this, fun. If the entire feud had been booked like this instead of what we got, we would have actually had a good program here. I don't know why it took them so long to figure that out. This was really a tale of two shows. You had the filler crap that had nothing to do with anything, and then the actual Impact. Sadly, the filler crap comprised the bulk of the show here, which I just do not understand for the life of me. They had to know how random and pointless, and yes, boring, this was going to come across, but they just doubled down and went for it anyway, and holy crap did it not work. I've seen one theory out there that this might have happened because they ran out of first-run material in the can, so they had to air a bunch of these random international matches just to fill 2 hours of TV time, but I don't buy that. For one, they've done these marathon TV tapings enough times now that they know how much footage they're going to need. Second, they had months to post-produce these shows, and they would have known well in advance that this was going to be an issue. And they could have re-edited these shows any number of ways. They could have swapped out one filler match with a segment from last week, another filler match with a segment from 2 weeks ago, or whatever. So at least you don't have one of your final Bound for Glory hype shows completely weighed down by this nonsense. It wouldn't have gotten rid of the problem, but it would have lessened the blow by spreading these segments out over multiple weeks. But they didn't do any of that stuff. So the only explanation I can come up with is that they really thought they were onto something with all these international segments, but never considered that they had no clue how to execute them effectively. And according to the viewership for this week, they sure as hell didn't. Every single member of the Impact creative team needs to be replaced. These people have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are completely ill-equipped for this job. Bound for Glory is in 2 weeks. You should be in hype mode. You should have the pedal to the metal, and instead you put on probably the most boring, skippable show you've done all year, where several matches on the Bound for Glory card were not even mentioned. As of right now, I'm still not 100% sure what the full card even is. There's no excuse for that. There has to be accountability. Somebody has to take the heat for this, and if not the writers, then who? So there's my review of Impact, and I'm still fighting off an illness here, so my voice is dying out, plus I got more stuff to do tonight, and I have to get up pretty early tomorrow for a long commute to a long work day. So I gotta end it there. I can't really interact with anybody tonight. I'm sorry. I know some of you guys tune in for that, but I just don't have the time for it tonight. So thanks for tuning in on this Friday night. Wow, there's actually 20 of you guys in the chat room right now. Holy shit. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm sorry I don't have more for you, but maybe next week my throat will feel better. And hopefully next week I won't have to work, so we'll have more time to do this. But for now, that's all I've got. So I've got to check out. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Over. Out.